In this video, we're going to be talking about completion in Neovim. All right, so if you're following along with the Neovim from Scratch series, you can head over to the repository. I'll leave a link in the description, and you can check out the 05 completion branch. If you're following along with your own Neovim config, that's fine too. You're just going to have to, write it all out yourself. We're going to be using Neovim CMP as our completion plugin here. I'm sure there will be different ones in the future or whatever, but right now I think this is kind of the one that most people use, and it works really well for me, and I think it adds a lot of nice extensibility as well, which I'll show later on in the video. So we're going to be using this. So the first thing you're going to want to do is wherever you keep your plugins, and you probably can't really see that, but I keep mine in Lua user plugins like that. And from here, what you're going to want to do is install Neovim CMP, and you're going to notice that there's a bunch of other CMP related kind of extensions, right? And so these are all extra completions. So for instance, buffer completions, path completions, like command line completion, so on and so forth. The reason that we have these, I guess, is just so all of that doesn't have to be built into Neovim CMP itself. And so this way you can create whatever completion extension that you kind of want. I'll show you where to find a bunch of them, but these are the ones that I think are useful right now. In the future, we're going to install one, for instance, for LSP. But this video is not really about LSP. The next one will be. But we want to set this up first. So these are basically extensions. One other thing that it will require is a snippet engine. A snippet engine is something like LuaSnip or Snippy or VSnip or something like that. I use LuaSnip. I've been using LuaSnip for a while, so I'm just going to do this with LuaSnip. Last thing that I'll add, since we might as well just do this while we're here, is just to add a ton of snippets. Friendly Snippets is a repository that just has a ton of snippets for a ton of different languages. So likely your language will be supported out of the box, and you'll have a ton of community curated snippets that will just work, Okay, so those are all the plugins that I recommend installing. When you're done, you can you can do Packer install like that if you're using Packer, and it should install them for you. I already have them installed, so nothing happened for me. And there you go. So now let's get started. We'll take a look at this, and I'm just going to show you how it works, and then I'll show you how I have it all configured. So first thing is anything in this buffer right now. If I start typing like RE, you should see that we can get to require, and that's found in the buffer, and you can see there's a little message there. Or we could do like a snippet, and so REQ is a snippet, so you just put in REQ and press enter, and you get a snippet, and we could require, like some other module, right, named whatever. So that's that. You'll notice too that I have like a super tab kind of functionality here. So if I type FU to get a snippet, this is the function snippet. You'll see that how it moves through this snippet is like you can kind of see this like pop-up menu here. And you can see that this is how it works. It goes like, okay, if you see a $sign and then a number, you'll see that that's where it'll go first. Then the $sign number is where it'll go second for the 2, right? And then $3 is where it'll go for the third time. So, and then whenever you see a colon, that's what will automatically be there before you even start typing. So we should see name inside of our function, like automatically it should say name. And then we should see, after the colon here, we should see a comment for code inside of the snippet when we're done. So let's press enter. Okay, and we do see name and we do see code. So let's talk about this concept of kind of like super tab. And so super tab just means that the tab key is like overloaded. So you could see that I could cycle through completions with it earlier, but also I can do this. So like if I name my function this, and then I press tab, it'll immediately take me to the next snippet location. I'll press ASDF or whatever again, and then I'll press tab again. Right now it has that open, so I guess if I close it with Control E and then I press tab again, it should take me into the next piece of the snippet, and I can just do ASDF again, and I should be fine. And that's pretty much it. Then it'll take you to the end, and then you can just use tab as normal, just like that. So now we can, so tab will work normally, just creating tabs. It will it will let you move through snippets like we just did, and then also on top of all that, it will also let you move through the menu. So that's kind of this concept of super tab. It can do a lot of things as you would expect it to be able to do, and setting that up has never really been super trivial. So you'll see how I did that in the setup, which I guess I'll go over now. So if you're familiar with how I set up a lot of this stuff, then you should be familiar with how I'm gonna set up this CMP plugin. So we have a file for each kind of like plugin or thing that we do, and so we have one for CMP as well. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do, and I'll make this nice and big so you can see it. The first thing that we're gonna do is we're just gonna require these two plugins here, so one for CMP and one for LewisSnip. We're just going to run this really fast to lazy load, I guess, plugins or the ability to load plugins from VS Code, so VS Code like plugins for LewisSnip. I think that's what it does. I'm not 100% sure, but I know that this makes sure that all my snippets work. Then I have a function here called check backspace. You don't really need to be super concerned with this, but it's basically just going to help our super tab work better. It's just gonna make it work more how you would expect it to. That's all you really need to know about that at this point. These kind icons here are all from like a nerd font, and I'll go into, or some of them are from like an icon from a nerd font, right? And I'll go into, I guess, how to set these up for LSP later, but they're pretty much all LSP related. So a lot of these you won't see until in the next video when we set up the language server protocol stuff. But yeah, so these are just all of our icons. If you're interested in getting a nerd font, I'll probably make a video in the future for how to install a nerd font, and you can find more symbols down here. So you can, if you don't like these symbols, you can add other ones that you can find here. All right, so now let's talk about actually setting up CMP. So if you head over to the Neovim CMP repository, you'll notice that I didn't just, come up with all of this and write it on my own. I'm basically just copy and pasting this chunk right here, but with a few changes. Like I'm not just requiring CMP, I'm doing it in a protected call so that it won't, like if I don't have it installed, it won't like break or whatever. So you'll see that we have to put a snippet engine. So this chunk right here is this chunk right here. It's just that instead of choosing vsnip, I chose LewisSnip as my snippet engine. And then we can go down to mappings. So Control K and J, I just added them. So if I do something, like if I want to move throughout the menu with Control J and K, I can do that. So just like I could do it with Control N and P, just like that. There's also Control B and Control F. So if we have, like, I guess, there's not really much that I can really show you that I can scroll through. But like, for instance, if one of these windows here was much bigger, we'd be able to scroll through it with Control B or Control F. So just keep that in mind, I guess. The next thing would be control space. So if you want to pull, if you don't want to like type to pull up the completions, you can just do control space, and then you can pull them all up that way. And this has the added benefit of giving you every single possible completion available, so you can kind of look through them. Control Y, I'm actually not sure what Control Y did, so I guess we're disabling it here. I never really paid attention to what it did. Maybe it selected the thing or something like that. I'm not really sure, but yeah, that's probably like maybe even a built-in Neovim kind of concept that I just am not aware of. And then Control E is to exit. So you can see in insert mode we abort, and in command mode we close. So we're gonna just do something like I don't know, like if we just open it up and we're going through it or whatever, and you don't want it there anymore, you can just do Control E and it'll get rid of the completions. All right, so now let's talk about CR here. What does CR stand for? It stands for carriage return. What is a carriage return? It's just the enter key. That's all it is, right? So if we go in here and we, start typing something in, we're tabbing through it or whatever, and we just want to press enter, it'll just press enter. It'll choose it for us, and it'll confirm the selection and make the window disappear. Okay, and now there's this concept of using tab as super tab, right? And this is how I do that. This is kind of like a custom mapping. It's kind of difficult to get this all working and explain like how it works or whatever. But basically, if CMP, the menu's visible, it's select next item. If I have the ability to expand a Lua snippet, then what tab does is it expands the Lua snippet. If it's jumpable, if it's expandable or jumpable, right, then I will jump to the next thing. Then we'll do that check backspace thing that I showed you a second ago, and that'll just fall back to regular tab usage. Otherwise, it's just a regular, it'll just behave like regular tab. There's a very similar thing that happens here with shift tab, but it's just, it doesn't have to do as much. So that's kind of how I'm getting super tab to work, and I explained super tab earlier in the video, so you should understand kind of what that's doing. All right, so now let's talk about formatting and what I mean by formatting. So formatting is, if we are inside of here, how does this look, right? Like, how does this completion menu actually look? How's it formatted? And so how I have it right now is to give me a kind symbol, and then give me the abbreviation, and then give me the like a what is this thing? Like I guess the menu or something like that. And you'll see what this, you can see this menu thing here. So that's what we're calling it. And the menu is just telling you, like, does it come from buffer? Does it come from, is it a snippet? And then you'll see in the future, does it come from LSP? Does it come from, is it path? So if we do something like this, you can see these are all paths, right? So yeah. So that's what that is. We can move that around. So like if you wanted, for instance, if you wanted this little symbol to be all the way over here, you could just move, what that symbol's called, what we're calling those, is we're calling those kind. So that's like a kind, I guess. And if you wanted that all the way at the back, you could put it all the way at the back. Okay, and so this is a format function here. I don't know how much he talks about format functions in, I'm sure that's in here somewhere. I know that if you go and check out the wiki, so if you're on the Neovim CMP repository and you click wiki, you should see advanced techniques here, mappings, like all different extra kinds of mappings that you can do. I think he goes over super tabs somewhat here, and just other things. I mean, I'm sure you'll find stuff here that might be useful to you that I don't have set up for this. But anyway, so this is how this format function works. You can format a string for your kind. So like for instance, we can, instead of, and I'll show you just like a different format just for the heck of it. So this is one format, and this is for .kind, right? So the .kind, remember, being the first thing that kind of shows up, right? So in this case, it's like a pair of scissors for a snippet. Instead of that, we could get that, and then we could also get the actual kind itself. That'll be more useful when we look at LSP, and I'll just leave that there, and I'll change a few things. And then anything that comes from Lua snip, right now we just have that say snippet, but we could, for instance, we could put something like Lua snip like that. We'll just make it capital to be consistent. And then buffer, I don't know, you could change that to like file if you wanted to call it something like that, or whatever, right? And now you'll see those will change, and then we'll just return this as a Vim item, and then this will format things. Also, maybe we'll swap kind to be where menu is, and then we'll grab menu and put that over here. So then you'll see that it'll just kind of be out of order. So let's save that and then go take a look at it again, and you can see the difference. So now you can see that the kind is afterwards, and then also the new menu thing is in the front there. So that's how you can kind of change this around a little bit. All right, let's go back into CMP. And that was formatting. So that's just some basic formatting. You can play around with this and add stuff that you want. I think likely you're just probably going to want to leave it the way that I had it there before. These are just some confirm options. Now these are sources. This is also very important. In the order that you have this is the order of precedence that will like so for instance, like if you have buffer over top of Lua snip, right? then all of the buffer stuff will be listed before the snippets. If you have path first, it will be listed before all the other things. So how I like to do this is I usually like snippets, then the buffer, and then what I usually will end up putting over top of this will be my LSP completion stuff. And I'll go over that in the next video. So this actually is important, the way that you set this up. There will be indexing done here. So this is the 0th index. This is the first. Actually, I think in Lua, this is the first index. This is the second, and this is the third. And so yeah, so that's something to be aware of. If you're like, how come all of my buffer stuff shows first? I think that's annoying. I want all my LSP stuff or my snippets to show first. However you want to do it, just make sure that you're ordering this in the right way. That documentation thing that shows up every now and then. So like if I do something like whatever like that, there you go. To get this to show up, you can just add like a border, or you can set it equal to true, and the documentation will show up. If you don't want it to show up, then what you can do is you can just get rid of this, and you can set it equal to false, and then that won't show up anymore. There's other things too, like ghost text, which is experimental, at least right now it is, and native menu. I'm not really going to go over native menu, but ghost text looks something like this. So if we come out and we do like, I guess you can't really see it, but if we do like require here, you can start to see, if you look pretty closely there, you can see that it uses the comment highlight group, and you can see that it's already starting to complete some of that for you inside of, like, I guess with virtual text right there. So yeah, so I guess, I don't know if that's like super helpful, but if you can see like with the color scheme, it'll like, I guess, I don't know if that's super helpful, but it's an option. You can set it if you want to. All right. That's the experimental stuff. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I think probably the hardest concept in all of this is understanding that there are extensions and sources. I guess they're called sources. I've been calling them extensions. If you want to find other sources, then what you can do is you can go down to, here we go. So where can I find more completion sources? There's a link. You can click here. And there's all kinds of completion sources. So this is just Neovim CMP. There's one for org mode that shows up. This is for, I think, like SQL-based stuff. I don't really know what that one does. This one's actually kind of interesting because this one we're going to pull into the next video, and this is going to give us the ability to actually use LSP in our completions. This is for Rust, so if you know anything about like crates and Rust and cargo and all that kind of stuff, this will help you with that. This is one for Git. I don't think I've ever used it, but it does something. This one's for ripgrep. We're using path right now. Lua snip we're using now. Buffer we're using now. There's one for tab 9, tree sitter. I think another really interesting one is this one right here that I think is pretty useful. It won't be useful until we have our LSP set up, but you'll get extra Vim completion stuff so inside of your config. So Vim will actually be something, and then after Vim you'll get something like, you'll get completions for opt or something like that, right? So that's kind of useful for when you're editing your config to have this CMP and Vim Lua source right here. Yeah, so there's ones for NPM, so on and so forth. There's like tons of them, and all you have to do to actually get the ones that you want are you go to wherever you're installing your plugins. We'll jump to the bottom here. Just add it after this. So like for instance, if I wanted to add, let's see, what's one that I actually could show you? I don't think there's really any that I can like show right off the bat without LSP, but how you would do it if we wanted to add, for instance, the NPM one. And I'm not even sure if this one works. I feel like I tried it before and it didn't. But, you know, you can see how this works there. All you would do is you would go and grab the repository like that. And you would just do use, paste that in there. Whoops, go like that. And for me, I just save the file and it'll install it for me. If you don't have that capability, then you can just do packer install and that'll install it for you. And then after that, what you'll want to do is... What you'll want to do after that is go into user CMP and then just add it as a source. So we'll add it as a source. The name should be, and they'll usually give you what it is. So the name for them is npm. So you'll just want to grab that there, and whoops, I don't know why that, I guess I didn't copy it, but npm like that. And now the first thing that should show up is npm completions when you are in like a package.json file, for instance. I think that's what this is for. Yeah, for package.json. So I'm not really sure if that works, but you can test it out if you want. But I'm just showing you how you can add all different other kinds of extra completion sources, and just to kind of explain that they're all broken up into separate repositories so that I guess the scope doesn't have to explode inside of the Neovim CMP repository. And so yeah, that's kind of a deeper dive on extra sources. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it for this video. I think that's a decent introduction to CMP, and then other things like super tabs, sources, snippets, and all that good stuff. So the next video we're going to be going over, I hope, LSP. Yeah, so the next video we're going to be going into LSP stuff now that we have the ability to do auto completion. Just because I figured we would get completion out of the way first, because you're going to basically want that before you. It's kind of one of the core things in LSP is that you have the ability to auto complete certain things, like symbols that are built into the language, or functions that are built into the language, or whatever else, right? So yeah, so I figured I would do completion before I did LSP. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. If you want to support the project, you can support me over on GitHub or Patreon. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.